An unattractive spouse comes back to insecurity. Anything you accomplish takes little things that are done repeatedly. That's definitely true when it comes to building muscle, losing fat, living a fit lifestyle. Everybody knows what's healthy and what isn't. Everybody knows you should be doing and they're not doing it. For a lot of people, it's enough pressure for them to cave.
Your resolve, discipline, boundaries, lifestyle caused everything else in your life to level up.
Absolutely. I became a little bit more confident. I wasn't afraid.
Welcome back to another episode of Rebel Weight Loss and Lifestyle. I'm your host, Cristy Code Red, author, entrepreneur, retired professional boxer, and we've got IFBB pro Jeff Lader back on the show. It ain't just because he's easy on the eyes, folks. We have him on the show because he comes to the table with decades of experience, decades of life experience, business experience with all sorts of different things that you experience. And he brings to the table a lot of good information that is applicable in your life. And today, of course, is no exception. I especially wanted to have him on the program because no one embodies this whole philosophy better than Jeff. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us, especially we're recording this on a Saturday. And I was like, beep, boop, boop. And I texted you and I was like, what are you doing? Because I know it's probably raining there. Are you stuck in the house? Will you podcast with me?
Well, thank you for the intro. Always exciting to do a podcast and talk shop about stuff that I'm super passionate about. And this topic in particular, I'm excited to dive into. It's a great one.
It is a good one. We're talking, I don't know what I'm going to name this podcast, but we're talking about falling to the level of your preparation. I think there is a saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, it goes something like, you don't rise to the level of your excellence, you fall to the level of your training. I remember we used to kind of say that in boxing. Like every time the going got rough during a fight, if I was getting hit too much or I got hit real bad in I got my bell wrong or something, you would just fall. The worst you would be the level of your training. That's why, you want to make sure that it was automatic, that you were, automatically keeping your hands up, automatically throwing that jab nonstop. And so, but today we're talking about falling to the level of your preparation.
Yeah, I actually believe in James Clear books, in Atomic Habits, in James Clear's book, he talks about falling to the level of your systems, is how he puts it, which I thought was great, because when you look at really anything that you accomplish that's worth anything, it takes little things that are done repeatedly. And that's what they say the definition of success is something, small habits done repeatedly. And it's not one big move, one big thing. It's a bunch of little things that add up. And that's definitely true when it comes to building muscle, losing fat, living a fit lifestyle. That doesn't happen overnight.
And a lot of people, and you see on social media, you see like the big things that happen in people's life. If you look at the average person's life, there may be like 5 or 6 big things: getting married, having kids, a big, like, your 20-year class reunion, and I don't know, like big things that happen. But life is comprised of the weekly laundry and picking up toys and going to get gas and getting groceries. And so it is the little things that add up, and the little things are what really make or break things that are going on, especially with your goals.
Exactly, and it's the little things really that you're going to be able to incorporate and make a part of your life, which I think is what is missing when we try to jump into these big, huge shifts. We jump into like some big boot camp, some crazy diet, some crazy restriction that is so far away from what we're adapted to, what we're accustomed to, what we do on a regular basis, that it's almost impossible for us to make permanent into our life. And so when we incorporate new systems, new processes, new habits, it becomes, and one at a time, really, it becomes more a part of who you are, and you really have that identity shift, and it becomes who you are, and that's how you end up living fit and staying fit.
So back before you were as giant as you are right now, it was long ago, before you were legally able to be on the gym floor, you would go with your mom, and you've shared this with us in other podcasts. You would go with your mom to the gym. Your mom has led an entire lifetime of being fit, and that was just her lifestyle is diet and exercise, and really was good at maintaining her health on a year, day after day, year after year. And so you would go with her to the gym, but you were too young to actually go onto the gym floor. And so long ago, this whole passion, this whole lifestyle started for you back before you even had your driver's license to even drive. And so this bodybuilding career started even when you had a corporate job. So take us back to when you had a corporate job, before the later lifestyle, before you started running your own big company, before all the 75 plus 100, almost 8,000 success clients that you've had, all the competition. Take us back to when you first started your bodybuilding career, and you had a corporate job, because you got a whole lot of funny looks and funny comments when you were living this lifestyle.
I sure did. I got all sorts of crap from people when they would see what I was doing or what I wasn't doing. If I didn't participate in what everybody else was doing, if it was like Donut Friday or something, or somebody's birthday and they were passing out cake, and at the time when I first started, I was pretty hardcore. I'm kind of an OCD type of person, and so if I go after something, I'm going to go all in. Which I learned a lot from, because I think there's a little bit more of a balance that you can incorporate. But when I first started, I was all in. But yeah, I had normal everyday responsibilities that everybody else does that would prevent a lot of people, or at least use that as an excuse to not do something, or to say I don't have time, because I was working 40 plus hours a week. I had my family and lots of obligations that I could easily use to say, yeah, I don't have time. Or I can't eat that, or it's impossible for me to follow any sort of structure. But there's a way. It just has to be high enough on your priority list, and you just have to incorporate one thing at a time, and it becomes a part of your life. And I stopped getting crap after a while, and people really, there was a couple times when I would actually participate in the festivities of eating donuts every Friday, which they would always seem to put right by my office, and everyone freaked out. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "No, it's okay. I don't currently have a competition coming up. I'm okay. I can have a donut. It's not that big a deal." And but they started to accept it, and even though you get a lot of resistance, I think, from the people around you at first, they start to expect that from you, and then they start to be inspired and influenced by you as well. And that's something I've observed with clients as they've been. It's usually work environments, because it's like coworkers that you have to spend time with them. You don't choose to. They're just there with you, and you get resistance. You get people giving you a hard time and trying to get you to deviate from what you're doing in a pretty aggressive manner in some cases. And what eventually happens, in my experience, what I've seen this with clients and even with myself, is as I start to change, as they start to change one by one, what coworker will come up to you and be like, "Okay, so how are you doing this? What are you doing? You're seeing, like, I've seen you change so much, and I know you don't participate in the potluck, and you don't have the cake and the donuts and all those things, but how is this possible? Because I've done that before too, but I can't maintain it." And that influence is something that I think we don't all realize that we have. Everyone has influence, whether we have 1 million followers or 10 followers. You do have influence over somebody, and you're always an example. And that's like with going back to my mom. She never asked me to go to the gym. She never told me to go work out. She never told me to do any of the things that I observed her doing. She served as that example for me, and that's what kind of inspired me to, or at least like piqued my interest in it, and I fell in love with it at a very young age. And I'm fortunate enough to have a mom that lived that lifestyle and is like a fit person. That's part of her identity.
We always say that people are going to ask you one of two things. They're going to say, "What are you doing?" Or they're going to say, "So now, why are you doing this? What's going on here? One of them, no, it goes like this. It goes, why are you doing this? That means they don't want to hear. And the second thing they'll ask you is, so what are you doing? That means they do want to hear. And do you think all those years you were packing your food into board meetings and packing your food into work lunches where it's like, hey, we're having a work meeting where we're going to eat lunch, we're going to have pizza, and everybody needs to work, we're going to bring in pizza, but you guys, we need to stay here at the office and have this meeting, and you brought in your prepackaged food. All those times and all those comments, I know what you're going to say, but let's hear it. Let's hear it for those of you in the back. That's more about them than it was about you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think if there's like the one person that, because everybody knows what's healthy and what isn't. Everyone knows that pizza is not the greatest thing you should be eating, and you probably shouldn't be doing that every day or every week, or eating donuts every week. And so when you omit those things and you are, doing what everybody knows you should be doing and they're not doing it, it kind of shines a light on them and be like, well, geez, it makes them feel guilty. It's kind of like you're holding up a mirror and be like, look what you're doing, even though it's not intentional, but people try to take it personally and make it more about them rather than honoring what somebody else is trying to do for themselves. And that's the disconnect. And unfortunately for a lot of people, it's enough resistance and enough pressure for them to cave. And that's unfortunate because it's a projection of insecurity, of jealousy, of whatever you want to call it, from the other person, because they wish that they could have that willpower, they wish that they could do that, even though they are completely capable. Everybody is. They just haven't made that choice. And sometimes it's just those small daily choices that we have to make that, sometimes we make a bigger deal out of them than they actually are.
Your resolve, your discipline, your boundaries, it was just convicting them. So what kind of stuff would they say to you? I mean, I've spent some time with you, and I've heard people say things to you that I couldn't believe would come out of their mouth. I mean, people say crap about, and it's not bad. It's just so bold and so forward. And you're talking to a girl who'll pretty much say anything. And so what kind of stuff would people just so boldly say to you about your preparation and your food and your boundaries and your lifestyle? What kind of stuff would they say?
Well, I think there's a little bit of a double standard. I mean, you can call it fit shaming. It's not that I really get offended by it. Sometimes it gets a little bit annoying where, I'll get comments just about my appearance, and if you said something else, like if you commented on somebody else's appearance in the opposite way, it's like, man, you're really fat. If you said that to somebody, that obviously is not socially acceptable. But somebody would be like, oh my gosh, your arms, like, don't skip arm day. Or, I've gotten weird abstract comments everywhere in the world, especially airports for some reason. Everyone wants to speak their minds in airports. But yeah, I mean, at work, back when I had my corporate job, I would get all sorts of resistance. At first, I would go to these big board meetings when I'd be there with the C-suite, with the owners of the company. And at first I would get some weird looks, but over time, as they would see me continuously doing this, I'd bring my food. I'm eating out of Tupperware when nobody else is eating, mind you. It's not like everyone's eating lunch. I'm in there eating my meal because I have to eat. And this is something that I've heard from so many people. It's like, oh, well, I have meetings. I can't eat. I'm like, well, I did. And you know what? What it did for me was I earned the respect of everyone in that room. No one looked down upon me. Nobody pulled me aside and be like, hey, you really shouldn't be doing this. Not a soul did that. I earned the respect of, in fact, every one of the owners, every one of on the C-suite knew who I was and would talk to me, and almost like talking up to me, like, man, Jeff, tell me what you're doing. How are you doing this? What can I do? I'm doing this. What do you think? And they would ask for my opinion on different things because they saw my dedication, and nothing would break me. And I think that was just so rare for them to observe that it made me stand out. But it really was just me trying to be consistent with what I was pursuing, and I didn't want to set myself back by, giving into peer pressure.
I love that. You earned their respect. Guys, seriously, they'll eventually just stop saying crap, and eventually they're going to pull you aside and say, all right, so now what's going on? How can I be a part of this? What is it going to take? And that's amazing. So you did well when you had your corporate job. You kind of climbed the ladder, and you were put in management positions. You did well. So, and I obviously agree. You and I are of the same ilk, but for the point of this podcast, your resolve, your discipline, your boundaries, your lifestyle with regard to your health caused everything else in your life to level up, including your job. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I used to be a pretty quiet, reserved guy, very introverted. You get me into a meeting where there's, more than 3 people, and I wasn't one to speak up. I was more of an observer, and, obviously if, I was asked a question or called upon, then I would talk. But, as I, built up my body and got more confident with what I was doing, it really did change kind of who I am as a person. And I became a little bit more confident. I became more outgoing, not outspoken, but, I wasn't afraid. It's like I lost the fear that maybe I once had. And just because I knew that I had their respect, and they treated me in a certain way. And it wasn't, it's something that I think a lot of people don't realize is like a secondary benefit for how people treat you, because it does say a lot about you. In fact, if you can maintain a healthy body and even take it a little bit further beyond, because I've been called extreme, I've been called obsessed, I've been called all sorts of different things. People have said that I look gross too. But it does show that, man, I've put in a lot of work. And that is a pretty common comment. It's like, man, I know how much work that takes, and there's no way I could ever do that. And what I did, I took mine to the bodybuilding stage, and I took it, very far, a lot farther than most people would ever want to. But, one comment that I would get from people all the time too, and this will be a little bit controversial, people would be like, well, I don't want to look like you. And I would translate that. And I would say, it's not that you don't want to look like me. It's that you don't want to put in the work that it took to get to this point. If you woke up tomorrow morning and you look like this, you would not be mad. You would not be upset with that. You'd be like, oh crap, I have too much muscle. I'm too lean. I'd rather have my gut and, be a little more average and mediocre. No one says that, but that's what they say. And they say that kind of, it's almost like a self-soothing talk, and they're justifying to themselves like, well, I don't want to look like that. I just want to a smidge of that, a hint of that, not the full thing. I'm like, well, why not? You don't have to compete, but, I think life is about self-mastery, and health is a huge part of that. It's the vessel in which you're navigating this life. You've got to take care of your body. If you don't, it's going to affect every other aspect of life. I've become more focused, more productive, a lot more organized with my time. And especially when I was competing, where I really was spread a little thin, because the time requirement to work out goes way up when you're competing for a competition. I was, sometimes in the gym, 2 hours of cardio plus my weight training, and then all my meals, 7 meals per day sometimes. And big projects get thrown in my lap, and I still have to navigate those. And what I found was that I was actually able to execute on those projects even more effectively, because I was forced to be so meticulous and so planned out and prepared with my time, so that I was able to do all those things, because I wasn't willing to let any of that go. And it was kind of forced upon me, but it was such a good thing, because it did allow me to get promotions and get recognized and do some big things with the corporate job that I had, as well as succeed on the bodybuilding stage.
I think maybe we'll save this. I desperately, because I know your opinion on dad bods, and I desperately want to go down that rabbit hole, but I will.
We can go there.
I've never bought into the dad bod thing, Jeff. And you said, I want you to say what you think. Why do girls act like they are like, I prefer dad bods? I don't like them, Jeff.
Yeah. I think there probably are some that prefer that, maybe, but I think the main motivation behind saying this, and I'm sure I'll get some hate for saying this, is that they don't feel threatened. Right. If they've got an unattractive spouse, they don't feel like anybody else is going to come and steal them from them, because who are they? Like, they're not attractive, they're not that appealing to the opposite sex. So it's like, well, I feel safe with my soft, mediocre husband that, doesn't look any different, doesn't stand out in a crowd, isn't a looker, doesn't have a great body, isn't in great shape, and it doesn't make me feel insecure about myself if I'm overweight. And so it's like both those things. And really what it just comes back to insecurity, and insecurity on your part about how you feel about yourself. On both parts, like if you feel like you can keep your husband, because like if they start getting like hotter, so to speak, then you feel threatened. It's like, well, who are you getting hot for? Well, how about you, babe? Why can't I get hot for you? And why can't I do this for myself? But instead, everybody makes it about themselves, even though someone else is doing something good for themselves.
I can't stand that. Like anybody's gonna prefer. I'd rather you have a pot belly instead of beautiful abs. And like, no, I don't. I agree with you 100%. So
Yeah.
fast forward now to the later lifestyle and close to 8,000 successful clients that you have successfully navigated through a huge lifestyle change. Is preparation or lack thereof the number one biggest problem you see with your, and if it's not, tell me, with your clients being successful or not? Is it preparation or lack thereof?
Well, I think that, the number one aspect of like that you can tie back to success is consistency. And you have to be consistent with your efforts. And this could be with whatever diet you choose to follow. You have to be consistent with it. Now, some are easier to be consistent with than others, but you're not ever going to be consistent if you're not prepared. If you don't take any sort of time to make sure that you can execute on the things you're supposed to execute. Like if you're supposed to eat a certain way, you can't just wing it. If you're trying to plan out time in your busy day to make sure that you exercise, you've got to plan that in advance. You can't just be like, oh, when I have spare time, that the day will be over before that time ever comes. So it does take a lot of planning and preparation. And if you don't ever do that, then your ability to succeed, especially with the nutrition side of things, is almost zero. You're never going to get there. So consistency really is the key, but you're not going to be consistent without planning and preparation.
Do you find that those meal prep companies that provide the food for people, I don't think you have an affiliation with any of them because I never see you talk about them online or anything, but have you ever used them? Do you think that's good for people to just let someone else prepare their food for them?
It's a double-edged sword. I think that they can be good. And I think in travel situations, like I've had it, there's been a few like expos that I've gone to where I've had those meals shipped to my location if I was trying to be really, really strict with things. And then I would just, would heat them up when I'm there. But on a regular everyday basis, I think the one problem with that is that it doesn't teach you anything. Because I think that's not a sustainable practice to have your meals delivered to you every single day, every meal of the day, every day of the week, and for years. Like that's not going to last. It could help you for time at times, and maybe it's one or two meals out of the day instead of going to a fast food joint. You've got that prepped and ready. I think there's something to be said about food that's cooked by other people seems to taste better than the food you cook yourself. But if you don't know how to cook, if you don't know how to prepare things for yourself, then you're going to have a hard time staying fit long term because you're not picking up that skill of cooking. And there's tons of people that I've met were like, oh, I'm not a good cook. Well, you're confirming that. You're just saying that. It's like self-talk. It's like negative self-talk, really. It's a limiting belief. Everyone can follow a recipe. It's not that difficult. Everyone just tends to put those labels on themselves like, oh, I can't cook, I don't like to cook, or whatever they want to say. But I think in order to make this a lifestyle, if you want to make this last, you have to pick up that skill and learn how to cook for yourself and learn to cook things in a way that serve you and serve your health. And so they can help, but I don't think it's a long-term solution by any means.
Yeah. What are some tips you have that can help people be better prepared? They've heard it from me, obviously like buy in bulk or use the crock pot. Do you have any kind of tips for helping people stay on track and stay prepared, as far as transportable containers? I don't know.
Well, I think that for one, when somebody starts on a diet, they kind of brace themselves. They're like, okay, here we go. There goes all the flavor and the fun from my food. And I got to prepare myself for bland, boring, gross, tasting food, and that's what they prepare. And so every time they go up in the fridge and they see that container sitting there with that old broccoli and dry chicken, they're just like, oh, I really don't want to eat that. That's the first problem, I think, is that you're preparing food that you don't even like. And you should never have to eat food that you don't like to get in shape. That is not a requirement. I don't know where that came from, but that's what we all tend to think. And like, so my food, I love my food. My food tastes great. I do use a pressure cooker a lot. I think that you have to think about how it's going to be when you reheat it rather than how it's going to be at the moment that you cook it. And I went through stages of like, chicken preparation. Everyone eats chicken when they're trying to be healthy, right? And I did the George Foreman grill, which was great coming off the grill. Terrible when you reheat it. It was dry. It was tough. Really not very good. And I choked it down for years. I did it anyway, because again, OCD. But I burned myself out on chicken breast to the extent now that I don't really ever eat it. Because I prepared it so poorly for so long. But I did finally pick up some new skills, and I actually do ground chicken now in a pressure cooker in the Instant Pot. And it's amazing when you reheat it because it maintains the moisture, and it's great when you reheat it. It's like made to be reheated. And so I think that's one key. And just, making sure that you are preparing in bulk. I think everyone looks like, oh, I don't have time to meal prep. I'm like, okay, well then you're taking the time to go to the store. You're taking the time to cook at the time it's supposed to eat. That adds up to way more time. It's just spread out than it would take to, take an hour or 2 hours on a Sunday to prepare food for your entire week. So it's, again, these are like excuses and things that we try to rationalize in our mind to say, yeah, I can't do this, but they might just not have the right plan or the right perspective.
Yeah, I like that. And like Redmond Real Salt, you guys, has some incredible seasonings. You guys, code RED15 is going to get you 15% off of Redmond Real Salt. So go to Redmond. There's a ton of seasonings and stuff there for you. Plus they have toothpaste and face masks and then like that brine kit, guys, don't eat bland food. We say the same thing, Jeff, on the Code Red Lifestyle. People, we give them the food list and we say, eat off this side, don't eat off this side. Well, what if I don't like that? Well, don't eat it. Ain't nobody shoving crap down your throat, Karen. Just eat what you like out of there. But you can't cherry pick over to the do not eat side just because you don't like any of your options over here. Or I'm vegan. Okay, well, I'm sorry. First of all, you're an idiot. And second of all, just stop eating crap you don't like, So now, okay, so Jeff, you did 18 shows?
40.
Oh my gosh, why did I say 18? Maybe 18 years.
It was about 12 years, 40 shows.
Oh, well, then forget the 18 comment. I don't know where that came up. Let me redo that. I'm going to redo that. Jeff, so you did 40 shows. Yes, I did, Cristy.
I did. So, 40 to the number.
I don't know where I got 18. So you were in prep all those times. Would you say that life in and out of prep, is it all that different? I mean, is it just like, you're prepping your food, obviously more strict when you're in actual prep, but you're still prepping your food even out of prep?
At first life was different because it's an extreme thing to do to get ready for a competition. And so when my first probably couple years, it would kind of consume my life. And it was just me not being able to prioritize everything properly. I let some stuff go when I was in prep, my very first competition. But, probably the last 30 shows that I did, so the majority of them, there was really no one would ever know that I'm in prep. Family wouldn't know, people around me wouldn't know because my schedule didn't change. I'm still eating food. It just, the portion sizes might change. I might be doing a little bit more cardio. But for the most part, no, nothing really changed when I would try to dial things in and take it, where I'm trying to get my body fat down as low as possible. No one would know. They would notice a difference in my behavior at all.
So nothing changes even with your clients. They go through your program. You get, when they want to lose weight, they want to lose body fat. You drop their calories. You have to. You've talked about this a million times. You have to drop your calories if you want to lose weight. Yeah. This is always a big argument that I'm like, no, you do. You got to be a little bit hungry. But then when they're coming out of a show or they're reversing, even as a lifestyle client, do you really instill that in them? Nothing changes, guys. Nothing changes, even in the reverse. Like, we still stick with the same routine.
Yeah, the reverse is important. I mean, obviously you've proven that you can stick to it and you can be, on point as much as you need to be as you're getting ready for the competition. And then you start to see some of that relax a little bit after, and then little excuses will start to come back into, I was really busy, or I had this meeting and so I missed my workout, or I ended up having to have pizza. And I'm like, all these scenarios that you just mentioned to me happened during your prep and you still made it work. So again, it just comes down to like urgency, priorities and things like that. And it doesn't always need to be number of priority. In fact, even when I was preparing for my competition, it was never number one. I don't think it ever should be. Like I don't describe myself as like Jeff the bodybuilder. It's just something that I do or that I did. I tried not to let it consume my life or even like be who I am. It's just something that I did. And so like outside of doing something extreme like that, the habits continue. People will talk about bodybuilding as being a lifestyle, which I don't really truly believe it's a lifestyle. I think you can pick up some great habits, but taking your body that lean is not sustainable. You can't maintain the physique that you have on stage, but you can maintain the practices and you can learn a lot about yourself. You develop discipline to an extent that a lot of people that I've coached that have been in the military didn't have. I've had people that have spent years in the military that dropped out. They couldn't handle it. Because it's a 24/7 thing, especially as a bodybuilder, where everything that you eat, everything that you drink, every activity that you do can affect how you look, especially when you get really, really lean. And so everything matters, every single thing that you do, the right supplements, the right water intake, everything. And I think, it's easy to let those things start to slip as priorities and urgencies start to go away. But if you can make those practices that you picked up and you can make the discipline that you learned and developed by going through, those couple months of preparation, you can make that a part of your life, then everywhere else in your life will level up. And that's really, it's allowed me to be successful with my business, with a lot of things, because I have that level of dedication that it's really hard to duplicate in any other type of environment.
On April 13th, my film Code Red Diaries of Madness was released. And the couple of months leading up to that, we did heavy promotions. And I was on several podcasts a day. I mean, we just crammed them in. And the number one biggest question I was asked over and over was, which one was harder, boxing or bodybuilding or competing? And I said, hands down, without a doubt, bodybuilding, because it's 24/7 and it's so many moving parts that you had to monitor and track and make sure that everything was lined up. Boxing really was just fighting, like I didn't have to worry. I had to make weight, but that was fairly easy. And, I just had to show up and train and just try not to get killed. And so people don't realize how hard it is. And some people say, oh, I'd like to do that someday. And it's hard for me, Jeff, because I want to go, no, let's just like do a Tough Mudder or something, And then part of me is like, yeah, give it a shot, see how it goes. But I know, I know what they're in for. And do you really want to go down this road?
Yeah. I mean, I probably talk more people out of it than I would ever encourage somebody to do it, because it is a lot. As you mentioned, it is, from when you compare it to other sports, other practices, other disciplines. Yeah, you can get away with, having a pizza before a game or something like that. But in bodybuilding, there's no like skill involved really. I mean, you don't have to master, hitting a baseball at 100 miles an hour. You don't have to, master your jump shot. You don't have to, do all these different things that are required. You don't have to, perfect your right hook. You don't have to do those types of things, but obviously the daily discipline, the practices, the food that you eat, everything that goes into how you appear, where it's like really the only sport, if you want to call it, where you're judged solely on appearance. And so so how you fuel yourself has a lot to do with how you appear. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, because when you are extremely lean, everything that you can do shows up on your body. I mean, it's like if you had a bunch of pickles the day before, it was really high in sodium, it could make you retain a little bit of water. You would immediately notice that on someone's physique. Whereas if you had a higher body fat percentage, you would never notice that, ever. You could binge out on burgers all weekend and not notice a difference on Monday necessarily. You might be up a couple pounds, but if your body fat percentage is already high, you're not going to see that difference in the mirror, and nobody else will either. But when you're that lean, every single thing matters. You could have a cheat meal and be like, oh crap, what did you do? Like, well, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had, 6 bowls of cereal. Yeah, I can tell. And these are things that I've heard before, but, obviously, but, so yeah, it does require a different level of discipline, and it is very difficult. It's just, it's its own beast. It's hard to compare it to.
And what you eat right now shows up on the stage in 6 months. And if you don't quite understand that, and I think when you're first starting out, you don't quite understand that. And you don't also understand the severity of the reverse and how the reverse is even more important than prep. Almost like you have to learn the hard way, that what you're eating right now is going to show up on the stage in 6 months, and everything matters. And it's really quite difficult. And it's something that is like, do you sure you want to go down this path? Cause I don't know, maybe just,
yeah. Well, I always say where you're at today it's a cumulative effect of everything that you've done in your life up until this point. So yeah, 6 months ago, 6 years ago, even dieting attempts that you've made in the past, they've all taken like chunks out of your metabolism each time that you've done it. And that's why you don't respond as well each subsequent diet that you attempt. I think a reverse, like obviously when you're doing a bodybuilding competition, you're taking your body to an extremely low level of a body composition. That's not sustainable. You do have to reverse out of that. But any diet that you put yourself on requires a reverse, because you put yourself in a deficit, and a deficit is, where you're burning more calories than you're consuming, which is required to lose any sort of mass. But if you don't do anything to try and bring your metabolic rate back up, then it's going to stay suppressed for a long enough period of time for you to store enough energy, aka body fat, until you basically erase the results that you've accomplished. And this is what happens. People go through this repetitive cycle because there's not any diet that I'm aware of, any mainstream diet out there that shows you how to actually reverse out of the deficit that they put you in. They'll give you the starvation plan. Here, eat this 1,000 calories a day, do this for 6 months, and you're there. Cool. You get to that 6 months, you're down 50 pounds. Then what? You go back to whatever you consider normal and you gain it all back. What did you accomplish? Nothing, except you actually hurt yourself because your metabolic rate has now gone down. It's suppressed from where it should be, where it was, and hormonal output is decreased, and you've kind of created a big mess. And it's not even necessarily the dieter's fault. It's the plan that they're following, where it doesn't account for the fact that you do need to recover from what you put your body through. We just don't ever think, we don't even know that that's a thing. We don't realize what's happening internally because we can't see it. We don't realize that our metabolic rate is going down, that we're burning less calories per day just by living, that how our sleep is affected, how our hormonal output is affected. We don't see that unless we get blood work. We can feel it sometimes if we're really in tune with our bodies, but there are hormonal and internal consequences to putting yourself into a deficit that nobody accounts for. And that's why everybody gains the weight back after any diet, not just an extreme diet like for bodybuilding competitions.
I'm always nervous when someone's approaching goal weight on my program, and I'm always on pins and needles. Let's hurry up and get them into maintenance and let's start the reverse. I'm always nervous. I don't like you guys being down this low. I don't like this. I don't want to stay down here. Let's hurry and get you into we call it the maintenance roadmap. And then we start to slowly build them back up. And it's a grueling time for me because I don't want them staying very low for very long. So do you feel the same way with your people? As soon as that competition's over, you're kind of just anxious to get their, I know that a lot of your girls don't lose their period, but most of them do. And that's not a good sign either.
Yeah. I mean, especially taking your body fat that low. A lot of girls do lose their period just because, it's a process that your body views as unnecessary for survival. And so it shuts that off. It's not a good use of resources, which that might sound weird, but again, your body's in survival mode. These are self-protection mechanisms that are put in place that makes us so resilient as human beings. And that's why our metabolic rate slows down. That's why hormonal output decreases, is because it's trying to stay alive. And so it wants to become more efficient, burn less calories, so you stop losing weight. This is why we plateau, but we don't account for that. And so if we ever want to, because people will hit plateaus before they've hit their goal weight, And sometimes they can't ever get past that. But sometimes the trick actually is to put yourself on diet breaks, to increase your food for a little bit, to do some carb cycling, different things, different methodologies that can keep your metabolism on your side instead of continually taking chunks out of it to the point where you're at 1,000 calories a day and you're still not in a deficit because you've caused so much metabolic adaptation.
I had a question and it just went shoo in my mind. I don't remember what it was. So, okay, so let me land this plane because I could just go on and on and on with, I know you're getting over being sick. You sound great, but I know that it's going to be, I'm going to be hitting that edge.
Yeah, forgive my voice. I'm not 100% right now.
Yeah. And I appreciate this. So guys, really, like I said, just to land this plane, preparation, obviously Jeff says consistency is key, and being prepared is going to help that consistency. Not trying to scramble every morning, running like an idiot through your kitchen, trying to throw crap in a bowl and everything. This isn't thawed and this isn't cooked and I don't have time to go make this. You're not making your egg bake up ahead of time. You're not making your roast beef up ahead of time. You're really setting yourself up for failure because you are not being prepared. And when you're not prepared, it's going to be more difficult to stay consistent. Anything you want to add, Jeff?
Yeah, I had a few different thoughts there because, I get comments about, because I've worked from home for like 12 years. And so people will be like, well, it's easy for you. You work from home. And I'm like, well, yes, that's true. But I have a very demanding schedule. I have calls all day. I have client work that I've got to do all day. I don't have time to waste to go into the kitchen and start cooking every time I'm supposed to eat, especially when I'm eating 7 meals per day. So I would prepare down to the very last detail. I would, like if one of my meals included a protein shake, I would pre-scoop the powder into a blender bottle. So all I needed to do was add water, shake it up and drink. If I had my chicken and rice and I was supposed to eat some almonds with it too, I would put almonds in a little baggie, because I'm weird. I don't like my food to touch. And until I'm ready to eat it, I'm a little kid.
I didn't know that about you.
I would tape the baggie to the Tupperware so that I wouldn't forget it, because I discovered that I would forget that part, because I would end up, before I started doing that, I was just pulling it out of the can or the bag. But if I was in a rush, I would forget that part. Another point of failure when it comes to food preparation or meal prep is that people will make a whole big container of chicken and then a whole big container of rice and not portion it out at the time they're preparing it. And so they could get into a situation where it's like, oh crap, I got to run out the door. I'm supposed to eat in an hour. I know I'm going to be gone for 2. I don't have time to scoop this out, weigh it out, make sure that I have what I'm supposed to have. I'll just get it later. And so that another point of failure. So instead of like making a big batch and putting it into a big bowl or a big container, portion it out. And that way you actually know how many meals you have too, because you could run out halfway through the week because you thought you had enough, but then you discover that you didn't, because you didn't know how many meals you actually had, because you didn't measure that when you first made it. So that's something that I definitely encourage people to do and it does take up fridge space. One of the things that you could do is you could put it in plastic baggies, for the ones, later on in the week, and then just transfer them into Tupperware at some point if you don't want to take up all that space in the fridge, because that is an issue at times. That's why I always had like 2 fridges. But it's, having that preparation down to the very last detail assures success. And then I would set reminders on my phone. The meal that I think gets missed most frequently is the second meal of the day. So, because typically, if you're eating 4, 5, 6 meals per day, which I think about 5 is ideal, but you're usually eating your breakfast, and then you get into work, and then you get your day started, and you get busy before you know it's lunchtime, and you should have had a meal around 10:30, and you missed it. So set reminders on your phone. We all have smartphones these days. We can all set reminders. And the second part to that is don't ignore them. Don't just dismiss them. When the timer goes off, get your food and eat it, and make sure that's prepared. So again, this is planning and preparation. It's not a lot of work. I think it can sound like everything I'm talking about. It's like, man, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of planning and preparation. You can tell your phone in 5 seconds to remind you every day at 10:30 to eat meal 2. That's all you need to do. Hey Siri, remind me every day at 10 a.m. to eat meal 2.
It might even do that. I'm going to have to turn it off. And then just make sure that your food's ready to go. So it just, that planning and preparation, without that, you will fail. There's no way you can succeed.
Jeff, you've got a muscle mastery program that is all encompassing. You really touch on the mind. You do a lot of mental mindset with these guys. Of course, you do the diet, you do full exercise, and you also have the ability, because you have partnered with the clinic, to check people's hormones. So it is truly a one-stop shop. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, a lot of people that I work with are over 40, and I'm over 40. I'm 46 myself. Been doing this for a long time, and as I've mentioned with past dieting attempts and then just life in general and aging, hormonal output tends to go down. And that does have an impact on the effect that we can get from dieting, from exercising, and it becomes less efficient with our efforts. So what used to work in our 20s, there's a reason why it doesn't work as well in our 40s, typically because of just, decreased hormonal output, sedentary lifestyle, and all sorts of things that are working against us. And so if there is a deficiency internally, we can address it by, at least checking blood work to see what's going on inside. Make sure that all the biomarkers are healthy. Make sure that your lipids look good, that your kidney function, liver function looks great. And then we can address that. And if there are hormonal issues like thyroid output is deficient, sex hormones, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, if there's anything that needs to be addressed there, we can take care of that and make sure that inside and out, you are healthy and you're good to go.
What is the best way that they can get a hold of you?
The best way I think is always to just go to my Instagram, and it's just at Jeff Later, JEFFLATER. And I'm always posting content on there. Hopefully it's helpful in adding value and you're getting something out of it. And if you're interested in talking with me, you can always shoot me a DM or check the links in my bio. But we don't do sales. We do a Black Friday promo once per year, and that's about it. We have a pretty high demand for clientele, but for the right person, it's we'd welcome them in with open arms. Is there anybody that's willing to work?
Yeah. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Rebel Weight Loss and Lifestyle. Guys, this is a little bit of a different one. I love having Jeff on the program, and everybody, we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me.